Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the American Masterminds Podcast.
Each episode, we invite extraordinary guests who are masters of their craft. They're innovators, entrepreneurs, and of course, motorcycle enthusiasts who have made their mark in the world.
They share their stories, insights, and hard-earned wisdom, giving you a front row seat to the strategies and experiences that shape their successes.
So sit back, grab a drink, and get ready for an exhilarating ride as we dive deep into the minds of these exceptional individuals.
Along the way, we'll uncover powerful strategies, gain fresh perspectives, and explore the limitless possibilities of what it takes to be an American mastermind. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the American Masterminds Podcast. I am your host tonight, Topher Sheeler. I'm joined by my co-host, Mr. Rob Adams.
What up, what up?
We got Alec Langdon up on the soundboard here this evening. And ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special guest with us here this evening. We have Ivan Gonzalez from the best seats in the house. Ivan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, guys. I'm excited.
Absolutely. Rob, why don't you give us our first question?
Oh, man, I got so many questions, Ivan. So many questions. Ivan and I have known each other for 4 years? 5 years?
5.
5 years. So a long time. Yeah, we've been friends for a minute. Ivan he nominates families in his organization to be fed during Thanksgiving from my organization. So we started working back and forth that way. I think that's how we kind of came in touch with each other.
Actually, a mutual donor introduced us. He actually brought me to the delivery day.
The big day.
The big day where it was before you had that group that does the setup early. We were part of the group where you came, put it all together, and then you left.
Oh, man, mayhem.
It was a mayhem.
It was messy. Yeah, we used to unload trucks by hand, and then we would just sort the food. I don't want to get into Thanksgiving shows, but it was a mess. So when you showed up and that you're still here, like, it's a testament to our friendship because we've come a long ways. Speaking of coming a long ways, how long have you been doing Best Seat in the House?
This is our 6th year. Sorry. I was trying. I was just doing paperwork this week, and I was just like, wait, what is it? 6 years? Yeah.
6 years,
This
which is
the 6th year.
Quite a testament. There's over 10,000 nonprofits that are in Utah right now. Did you know that?
Oh, wow.
And most of them don't raise a penny. Like, the 80-20 rule, 80% of them don't do anything with it. They've just organized and they've submitted their paperwork, and they're actually a 503c, but they do nothing with it. And then of the 20%, there's also another 80-20 in there that gets even smaller, that 20% that are actually doing their mission and driving down the road. And so it's a very small number of organizations that are operating at his level. And I say that because understanding the monumental amount of work that's involved and the obstacles that you face, and we're going to talk about a few of those things today, but also the amazing amount of good that you do on the side. So let's start at the beginning. Back when you were working at the hospital, can you tell us the kind of where it started?
Yeah, so I used to work at Ronald McDonald House here in Salt Lake, and I probably a month in, 2 months into working, just fell in love with these kids and just seeing the struggles they're going through. I was like, man, my birthday was coming up, and I was like, man, I want to do something for my birthday. And I was talking to a coworker, and we got to let's throw a carnival for the kids. Let's do a birthday carnival. So I got my friends to pitch in. We hosted a carnival at the Ron McDonald House with dinner, and it was awesome because the kids were like, wait, this is your birthday and you're giving me a present? And I was like, yep. And it seriously was the best birthday I've ever spent, and my friends loved it, and they're like, this is awesome. And then a month or two goes by, and I was like, man, I want to do something else. So we did a luau, and then for about a year we just did these events, and I was like, wait, we can do this for not just kids getting treatment in the hospital, but all kinds of kids that need some joy. And I quickly realized, I was like, after a year, I'm like, I can't keep doing this on my budget. And that's when I formed the best seat in the house. And also part of it is, my childhood, I grew up very poor, and we didn't get to do a lot of things that I would say normal kids did, like going to concerts or sporting events. We just couldn't afford these things. And I never knew some passions till I became an adult. And, theater, I love going to the theater now, but, a kid in the ghetto, it's like theaters like New York City, Broadway is like
Yeah.
rich people and stuff.
It's something you see in the movies, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. And I was just like, but I moved to Utah and there's a huge theater culture here, and it's amazing. And I'm like, man, I wish I would have known this as a kid. Not to say I would have went into theater or anything like that, but it just continued to open my mind to when I started Best Seat in the House. Is like, we need to get these kids exposure to things that they can't afford, or they have limitations because of their medical conditions or whatnot. And we do it for free for all these kids and open their minds, and they're like, wait, one girl, she's has cerebral palsy, loves acting, and we've been sending her to Hale Theater, Eccles Theater, and she has an agent now, and she's doing movies and stuff. And I'm just like, and she's in a wheelchair and disability, and it's obviously limitations to it, but now that she has a contract, I'm like, what? And she's like, thank you so much for opening my eyes to make it possible. Like, of course. And that's what we do. That's just one example of many things that we do. But yeah, parts of it is my childhood and not having the ability to do some of these events and experiences. And then my work experience working for these other nonprofits that do amazing things, but there was a void of, doing events and experiences, especially keeping families, doing it for the entire family and not just the one kid that's going through what they're going through.
So let's back up just for 2 seconds. For those that are listening that maybe don't know, why don't you tell us what Best Seat in the House actually is and what they do?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
I get excited and jump right in.
Yeah, I know. So we provide events and experiences for disadvantaged kids. And we focus on families with kids that have cancer or some kind of medical condition, refugees, kids in foster care, special needs, and kids in poverty. So those 5 categories, kind of almost any kid that has a disadvantage fits into one of those 5 categories. And we'll do events where we host. So we have tons of families that'll come. Carnivals is a big centerpiece of a lot of stuff we do, but a lot of that is around the holidays, Easter egg hunts coming up, summer bash, summer pool parties, back to school carnivals, and then Halloween. And then in December we do holiday dinners and do a big dinner for Title I schools and then give out gifts. And then
let's just stop 1 second. Not just gifts, like some awesome stuff.
Oh yeah, like what?
Just like I've seen hoverboards, like those. We're not talking about like, hey, you're just gonna get a bag of candy that's all stuck together. That's your gift. Have a nice Christmas. Like, it's some cool stuff. And the kids get to come in and they get to pick. They get to pick one thing, whatever they want. And there's a whole table of stuff that they can choose from that they could be interested in, and it could be something, crafty if that's what they're into, or science fiction, and there's dinosaurs and sporting things. I mean, it's not, we're not talking low end stuff. It's nice things.
No kidding.
But yeah, these kids come in and they lose their minds. Like, it's
do.
they
do. It's awesome.
I love that, Ivan. As I'm talking to you, I'm realizing what a master of understatement you are. Like, you have like glossed over some like really kind of amazing things, but these kids lose their minds. Like, Ivan has to have a staff kind of behind the table that are kind of goalies. Like, no, just one thing, and you got to decide. And they like, because it's hard to choose. Like, these kids are coming in with nothing, if anything at all, and here's like some amazing stuff. And then you see them walking around with it. They're walking around and they're like showing their friends, look what I picked. It's totally cool. It's a cool event. And so it's not just like an Easter egg hunt. It's like, it's huge.
Huh.
And these kids honestly, they have like the clothes on their back and the food that they've been given from the school. And then Ivan shows up like this miracle worker, and these people are just like, what? Like, and
Bringing the party and the presents.
Yeah.
I like it.
The cool thing about it is that you're planting seeds. I think about my origin story, and I don't want to get into my origin story, but someone did something kind for me that had no reason to. And I see you doing that to all these kids and like doing that. And I think, will it make a difference? To one. But that one is going to grow up and be the Ivan. It's going to be the Rob that's going to make the difference. And I say one, but I bet I've seen your events, and we're talking about hundreds of kids that are being affected. And then if you believe in the ripple effect, which I do, if you do something kind, if I do something kind to Topher, he's going to be in a better mood, and he's going to go home and he's going to be kind to his partner, and she's going to be kind then, and it goes out, and the ripples are, I've heard they go up to 27 ripples. I've heard like different numbers back and forth. And if you think about the hundreds of kids that you've served and the ripples that you've created in the universe, my friend.
Yeah,
Think about
I guess I don't think about that very often, because I just love what I do and love seeing the kids. And like you said, like especially during the holidays, and we, like he mentioned, we don't wrap our gifts because we want the kid to pick what they want.
They're not getting a pair of socks.
Oh, yeah.
Oh no.
But yeah, you're right. I remember certain a church group when I was a kid that gave us presents when we didn't have Christmas gifts, and that obviously made me. I still remember that.
Yeah.
And now I'm helping hundreds and thousands of kids after that. Just that one Christmas, by this local church group that I can't even remember the name of the church or whoever gave it to me, but I remember the act, and now I'm doing the same thing back. So, yeah.
Where did you grow up, Ivan?
In Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it was actually the first capital of the United States, York, Pennsylvania. That's what we like to brag, because history books, it was like the capital for 3 days. And then went back to DC.
Oh man. Well, Ivan, as you are, you're one of the things I admire about you is you're a numbers guy, and you appreciate the numbers. When you're talking about the numbers of children that you've helped, and now you've kind of spread your mission. It's not just those at the hospital. You're helping these other kids that are a little underprivileged. They're in these Title I schools. What would you estimate the number of kids you're helping or influencing or being, I don't know how the best word to say it, but every year?
Yeah, so we've grown immensely, and it's funny because I've been working with a grant consultant, and so we've been putting some real numbers and stuff behind it. Anyway, I can't say how many kids we served last year because we saved that for our gala. That's my special announcement. But our first year we served 600 kids, and then up until last year, so not last year, the year before that, we served 7,800 kids. So we
in 6 years, that's
in
your growth.
6 years, we went from 600 to 7,800.
And where are you finding the resources for that kind of growth?
I'm a big believer in, a lot of stuff, religion, karma, destiny, whatever you want. I just loop it all together, and something happens. And I'm a big believer in just talking and saying stuff that I need out loud. I need more funding. Every charity always needs more funding, but certain things, I need this kind of person, and then I say it to a few people, and then they're like, "Hey, I have a friend." Boom, 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 and I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" So just saying it out loud has been a thing, and just hard work, and luckily to get some exposure in the right areas that have really taken off, put us around people more and thinking about us more. And just last year I won the Utah Philanthropy Volunteer of the Year, and that's really opened a lot of doors too. And so things like that just continue to.
Let me pause you right there one second. I was nominated.
Yeah.
I was one of the hundreds of people that were nominated. There's a lot of people in Utah doing some great stuff, and so the fact that you won this is significant. It was a big deal, and it was awarded to him by the lieutenant governor. Is that right? And another big influencer that's down in Utah County. I forget her name.
So the punchline here is Ivan is underselling the crap out of him.
Yeah,
right now.
he's
Okay.
Captain
All right.
Understatement.
I
I'm like, whoa. Let's back up. This is huge. This is a huge thing that he won. This was a big deal. And
Yeah, you don't just win that by we give a couple of presents out.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, the competition is intense.
Yeah.
I actually talked to one of the committee members that was part of the voting, and she said it was me against 200 people.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, I thought maybe a couple dozen or something, but no, she's like, no, we had to go through 200 nominations, and you were the choice. I was like, Wow.
It's amazing.
Incredible. Holy cow. Well, quit underselling yourself.
I'm just-
Bring it out.
I guess I'm used to the like elevator pitch. So I'm like, I don't know how long we're talking about this.
We've got all the time in the
As
world
much
here.
time as
Tell
we
us,
need.
tell us what we need to know.
So the thing is winning something like that puts you into a different, category. You're all of a sudden you've got some street cred.
Yeah.
You're no
Yeah.
longer just this dude that's got a job at the Ronald McDonald House that wants to do this kind of cool luau. You've got you've influenced and done these things. And so how has that changed your trajectory?
I think we jumped a couple steps. I don't know if the steps is the right word, but there's people I've been trying to work for 6 years as I started a charity. After that event, they're like, "Hey, we love to work with you." And I'm like, "Yes, I've been trying to work with you for 6 years, and no one emails me back or whatnot." And obviously, there are a lot of big organizations and big philanthropists in Utah, so I get why it's hard to get to some people like that. But that really helped.
If you jump straight to the top and get the governor to sign off on it, it's got to make things a lot easier.
Yeah.
Well, just so you know, and in the nonprofit world, to differentiate yourself in this manner is super rare.
Oh, it's very big.
Yeah, it's a very competitive world, and there's a lot of foundations out there that they're being approached by 5 or 10 people a day with their hand out. Excuse me. And so the fact that they can now recognize your organization is a huge thing. And also I think that there's a tipping point. I think there's a period in a charity's life where all of a sudden you're a trusted entity. There's something that has to happen. And I don't know if I've hit that point yet. I see you're winning this award and you're having conversations with some of these larger organizations because now all of a sudden you're on the map. I think that's amazing. And once that tipping point happens, then all of a sudden it's not so hard. Your problems start to change from how many you can help, but then it comes who you can help and how I can continue to create. Have you noticed that, a shifting in your perspective?
Yeah. And having a lot more help in certain areas that I'm weak at has helped open things. Again, like I mentioned, a grant consultant, she's opened things and looks at things at a different way that I'm like, oh, she's like, you could totally use this. I'm like, really? And I'm like, so because I mean, like anyone else that starts a charity, it's like all this work, no money, and it's just so my mindset this year has been a little bit different than the first 5 years, because I'm like, oh, I'm starting to, like with our gala, I'm starting to nitpick. I'm like, well, I've never nitpicked before, but I'm like, wait, I had to take a step back for certain things. I'm like, no, this isn't a big deal anymore. This is, it's like, oh yeah, it's, it's getting myself out of the weeds, because I've jumped in the weeds so much to work the charity and try and find anything I can. Now it's like, oh, okay, just be patient.
Well, how are you, because this is your baby, this is your invention, your dream. How are you giving away these responsibilities to these people and doing it with grace and not taking it back? Because it's an easy thing to do where someone's not meeting your perceived expectations, because this is how we've done it, and now you give it to somebody else, and just because they're not doing it the way you did it doesn't mean it's being done wrong. It's just being done. How are you trusting? Tell me the process there, because that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, I probably did it not normal way, because when I started, I gave a lot of the way very quickly, and then that was a backfired, because some friends, I love them, but they
didn't know what they were getting into.
Didn't know what they were getting into, and I mean, part of me, I didn't know certain things that I was getting into. So then for a couple of years, the first couple of years, I was just like, yeah, here you go, and I'm like, ooh, I brought it all back in. But then last year, particularly, I was just like, I can't do this all, But then I started to meet with people, consult with other nonprofits, just to see, because there's so much information to start a charity, and there's so much information to run a large charity, but there's not a lot of information for the middle. Sure. How do you get from small to medium to large? There's nothing really that people talk about, and probably because it sucks. It's it's so
No
hard
man's land.
to grind. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this before last year, I was just like, I got to take stuff off my plate. I can't, this is too much. But consulting, talking to other people in my position that's been there for 10 years, 8 years, just a few years more than me, helped. And then I realized, I'm like, hey, let's create steps that people don't even know about, but I do, to see if they're really in it. Like they want to help, because a lot of people, and not to get down on them, but a lot of people are like, oh, I want to help. And especially in the mood, they're at the event, they're like, yeah, let's do it. I'm so excited. And then go home and it's like a different thing. And, volunteering, you're not getting paid. So there's a back and forth, because you're like, you can't pay someone, but you need some commitment for these different positions. So I was like, okay, well, in my mind, I created these different steps that if someone showed me this, again, I didn't tell them that I was watching them, but it showed me. I'm like, oh, hey, they're actually here. They're coming almost every other event. They're answering the emails, sharing. I'm like, okay, they're committed. That now I can approach them and be like, hey, I'm thinking I need someone in this position. This is what
I see it looking like. Yeah.
This is what the commitment looks like, the time commitment, blah, blah, blah. Is this something you think you can do? And then give them time to think about it and stuff. So just, I guess, an initiation in a way that, like, no, they're in it, and blah, blah, blah. But
It's interesting
took a while.
Yeah. It's interesting how it will, that'll gel out, because at the beginning you're like, anybody, come on, I need your help. And then you kind of get to a point where you start to be like, I've been burned a couple times by someone that's overpromised and underdelivered. And then there's a point where all of a sudden you have a surplus of manpower, but you don't have a lot of talent happening around you. And I need to find someone who's good at doing what I'm not. And then that's what you're talking about, like the grant writer. You're really good at the budget. You're really good at putting your numbers together. I am not. That's not my strength. And so I had to find someone on my board to do that. And it takes a tremendous amount of trust, but I do believe that she's better at it. Like even on her worst day, she's better at putting the books together than I am, and reporting the budget and making sure we're staying on task. And so that's a powerful thing. But I don't want anyone to be a part of my organization unless they've delivered food.
Yeah, exactly. They have to come to at least 2 events.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, that's really interesting to me. What is the criteria? What are you looking for to get, like, that person has been initiated?
Yeah, so at least 2 events. So we have, our events are, it kind of fluctuates, but almost every month we have 1, 2, 3. During December, there's like 6. So there's plenty of options for these volunteers to volunteer at. And mostly they need to see the vision. It's really hard I try and get funders to come to, which is a little harder because they're, being asked 5 times a day from different organizations. But if I'm able to even just send them a video of what it looks like, just they see the vision, because, people are like, oh, that sounds awesome. But then when you come to our events, like Rob has come, they're like, oh, I get this, not that they didn't get it before, but they just see that vision. So yeah, usually two events. I'm like, they have to come to at least 2 events before I even think about it. And then we have a couple fundraising events and trainings and stuff. And if people are regularly showing themselves at them, I'm like, okay, they're in it. They're committed.
Interesting.
To you, as you're speaking to them and they're at the events, there's a language of commitment. There's like you can tell this person's kind of bought into the vision. They're talking about where we're going. They're talking about the mission. And so it's interesting that you start to see who those people are, because I've talked to some of the people that are my best volunteers, and when I talk to them, I get excited about the organization. Like, I'm not bringing the heat anymore. They're bringing the heat, and that's kind of a big one for me. Like, I want to be able to stand next to this person, and they're just like, oh man, this is so awesome. I can't wait to do it. And you're just like, it is awesome. Let's do this. That's awesome. I wanted to talk to you then about the mission. So here we are. We're 6 years into the game. You're talking to people you've never talked to before. Your organization is a new level of maturity that you've never experienced before. Where do you see Best Seat in the House in 2024? Like, what do you see? And I know you don't want to ruin the gala that we're going to talk about coming up here on March 12th. But where do you see us going?
Last year was a big transition year for us because first 5 years I was just like, go, go, go. It's, I
Defining the
wanted
mission.
to, find the mission, define it, and find where we fit, what made sense and what didn't make sense. And last year, I made some tough decisions of cutting some partnerships, not like cutting them, but like, hey, we don't really gel together. It doesn't seem to make sense. Even though the first few years I'm like, yeah, let's do that. I was saying yes, yes, yes. And now it's like, okay, now we know what we're really good at and where the need is most. And that's where I want to make sure we concentrate with. So this year is kind of a tail end of the transition year of like still
Getting some clarity now. What do we do?
And then creating more of a foundation now of having more support in different areas and making those acts after last year of like, okay, watching the supporters and I'm like, okay, these are the few people that I think could take another level with us. Now this year we're bringing them on and training and all that. So this year is really foundation year of making sure as we take this next level that we're ready to take it and hopefully take off more than we've ever had before. Just now that we have a groove and we have momentum and support financially and manpower, that I'm like, okay, we're ready for more.
Oh man, isn't it the rebuilding of the foundation that is the constant thing? It's the thing. Like when you first start out, you're like, wow, where am I going to find people to do this? And then you solve that problem. So now we have to shift our foundation to, well, I've got all these people that want to do it, but I don't have any way to pay for it. Now that's the foundation. And so it's like this constant reinventing and rediscovering, and you're going to go to this next level and you're going to see all of these new holes in the basket that you didn't even know were there, and you're gonna have to work on it. As the founder of the organization, do you feel that growth personally as well? Do you feel like you are on this journey? Has it refined Ivan?
Oh, immensely.
In
Like
what regard?
everything. I just the way I can talk to different types of people, different types of supporters, be comfortable with talking to kids because I'm helping them and stuff, to talking to like, Gail Miller, who's one of the biggest philanthropists in Utah, like just going back and forth, when I started, I'm like, hey, how's it going? This is what we do. And now being able to talk to all kinds of people, again, talk to 1,000 people if I have to, or, whatever it is. And then just my weakness is just trying to not make them strengths, but just not make them weaknesses. So before you get the strength, the medium ground of working on things and learning boundaries and having expectations and commitments and be okay with like, people are going to say no or people are going to drop out. It's
part of the game.
It's part of the game. Yeah.
Powerful stuff. So let's talk for a minute about who would be your perfect volunteer? Like if we could find somebody, someone in the community who wants to get involved in a local organization, doing good things, supporting these different demographics. We've got all kinds of children from that are struggling with health issues or disabilities, or we have these other children that are they're food insecure. They're in these Title I schools. You have a broad footprint that you're putting down there. Like, tell me about if you could describe a perfect volunteer, who would it be?
I mean, we will take anyone really, but I guess the perfect volunteer is someone who, loves kids, kind of energetic, and let's say this, I don't want to say relate, but somehow can get to their level, the kids' level. And I guess I'll tell you an example of something that I noticed really quickly of an awesome volunteer. So we have carnival games, and kids are growing, so there's different sizes and stuff. And this volunteer, he's actually my volunteer coordinator now. He quickly moved up the ranks in 1 year because of what he showed me. But we have tables, and he'll take the carnival game off the table for a kid in a wheelchair who's lower and like hold it. And it's like, okay, we're down to your level. Go ahead and play. And I'm like, yeah, that's like, like when you come volunteer, you're part of a station and you're in charge of it, but I let you just be in charge of it, like run the game, play with the games. Like, some of the games have rules and different things. And I'm like, but I don't care if you need to change it because the kid can't do it or it's really hard. And it's like, yeah, change it, go for it. So the ultimate volunteer is one that's like loves the kids, relates, and again, literally will go down to their level to play with them and help them win, that prize at the end of, we give a prize at every event for just being there. So yeah, that's kind of I love those volunteers. I'm like, yeah, they don't mind doing whatever it needs to help the kid, which helps me know that like they'll do the grind, they'll do the behind the scenes stuff that no one sees, but is very important, but doesn't get the glory as like, being in the front.
Mm-hmm. That's a great answer. If you could look for a prime demographic or type of donor, who would be the people that, if you could talk to 5 companies today, because we're talking about corporate donations. In my organization, most of the money is made or raised through individual donations, which are amazing, but it's a lot and they're very small. And it's amazing because I see single moms and grandmas and people who have no business donating are going out of their way to donate to feed families. But let's talk about the corporate level. These guys, they're looking for a local organization. Like, who would you be aiming for?
I would say any organization that is family centric, I guess would say, that loves kids. We're very open with volunteers, so like, their company can come volunteer as well and give. But I guess, yeah, that understands what a family is, and that doesn't mean like a mom and dad and one son, one girl, like whatever the family is, a grandpa, grandma, adopted, whatever, but that family centric mindset, because they know what it is to be like a family, but they also know, if they were going through the struggle as a family, they're like, oh, I have a son that's doing this or a daughter that's this, blah, blah, blah. They just relate so well. And we're really big on families volunteering with us because I want to say a byproduct or whatnot, and why I push for families to volunteer. I mean, anyone can volunteer, but a lot of these kids that volunteer with us, it's the first time they meet a kid in a wheelchair sometimes, or this or that. And one family, one mom was like, yeah, I'm gonna change their names, but she's like, Bobby went home, he met little Jimmy, who's in a wheelchair, and he went back to school, and he started talking to the kid in his class as who's in a wheelchair, because he was like, hey, I met Jimmy and he has this condition. I wonder if this kid in my class has that condition.
Makes him a person.
So he goes and befriends this kid, and I'm like, oh, again, that's not something that we were like our mission, but it's kind of a byproduct of, like, yeah, we want more kids to volunteer as well, because it just creates this exposure. And these kids are like, it's okay, he's in a wheelchair, why don't you ask him, and then they're like, yeah, I played with video games with little Jimmy, and he's just like me. I'm like, yeah, he's just like you, he just has something else that makes him different, but he's still a kid, and he still wants to play video games, and he still wants to win a prize, blah blah blah. So it's kind of a byproduct. So any companies that are like that are we love, because they know it. They know how hard it is to raise kids, and this is going to be on social media, but social media is great, but there's also some drawbacks, and there's a lot of things that these kids are going through. Yeah. So that's why I big believer in families coming to volunteer. And
I've seen that. I've been to a few of your events where mom and dad are over there, and they've got like 3 or 4 of their kids are, one's serving spaghetti, the other one's handing the bread out, and the other one's at the dessert table. Like, that's obviously, those are the Jensens. They all look the same, you know what I mean? And I've talked to mom, I've talked to dad, and they talk about how great it is to serve together. And it's very rare, this is something I wanted to highlight, it's very rare to find service opportunities where we can all participate. There's you can go down to the food place, but it's not safe to have a kid in the warehouse, and so you can't bring your kids or
Right.
whatever, right? And so it's a great opportunity. I wanted to highlight that.
Yeah, I was kind of taken back by that because as you mentioned, there's 10,000 nonprofits, and I get there's certain with some organizations there's certain restrictions and stuff like that. And the past couple of years, I've been lucky to be invited to the governor's wife's Show Up initiative, where she does a volunteer event where she tells the whole community to come, and there's like you're there. There's like 50 so odd organizations looking for volunteers, and I'm there, and we're collecting names and stuff, and how many have come up to me after I'm in the middle, after going through like 20 other organizations. They get to me, they're like, oh my gosh, so my kids can come with me? I'm like, yeah. So, and I get it, like other organizations, they have their restrictions, but how rare. I was kind of taken back. I'm like,
You mean you can't do this everywhere?
I can't really do this everywhere? Yeah. And I'm just like, yeah, we'll take the whole kids,
Yeah, I want to highlight that because I think it's a very rare thing that it's a family friendly.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess you didn't really think about that.
Yeah.
And a lot of places where you want to go, maybe you don't want to bring your little kids to,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. That's very interesting.
Yeah. Our only caveat is that they have to be with a guardian.
That makes perfect sense,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah.
Is that you get volunteers? Because I got another question. That
Go.
I'd like all right. So we talked about the volunteers and what you're looking for. Is there a story that sticks out to you, like the why you do this? Is there a specific somebody that you saw at present or one of these events that just kind of changed their world?
Oh, we could go for hours on this. The one I bring up a lot because it was that first year, but it was so impactful. So a big part of the charity is doing events, and I love going to events because as a kid I couldn't afford it and doing all these events. So now as an adult, I'm like going sporting events, concerts and stuff. So now I just like have all these friends, and I've made these connections that now I turn to the charity, and we'll get tickets donated or vice whatever it is. So that first year, my buddy still works for the Jazz. Anyway, he loves to hook me up, and he was just like, hey, my family I can't remember what, but anyway, he's like, I got these tickets tonight for tonight's game, and they're in the Toyota Club, and the Toyota Club is like all you can eat buffet. It's first like 10 rows, of the Jazz game. I'm like, this is awesome. Like, I can't wait. We happened to have an event that same night, so I was like, oh, I'll go to the event, do the event, and then run over to the game. And we're doing this event, and this mom comes up to me, and she's just like, hey, do you know, it was close to Christmas, and she's like, hey, do you know where I can get a Jazz jersey? And this event was at Ronald McDonald House, so it's like 2 miles down the road from the stadium. And I was like gonna say Walmart or something, and I'm just like, oh, actually, we're right down the street from the Jazz Stadium, and they have a store there. She's like, oh, great, thank you so much. Well, yeah, sure, no worries. And then she went with her kids, and they were playing the games, and I just kept thinking like, I have these tickets, I should probably just give it to them. And I'm like, but it's the Toyota Club. I mean, I'm like, all you can eat food, and a big sports fan, and I was just like for 20 minutes, it just kept bugging me. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna give it to them. So they actually left, and I was like, oh crap. So I ran all over the house to try and find them, and I found her, and I was like, hey, are you busy tonight? And she's like, no. And I was like, here's 4 tickets to the Jazz game tonight. Why don't you take the kids, and then you can buy a jersey while you're there? She's like, oh my gosh, are you sure? I'm like, yeah, go for it. Just thinking, oh, that was great. That's what the charity does. It's gonna be fun. Not expecting this thank you card I got back, but I was just like, yeah, I mean, it was enough. I loved it just to send them on the way. But she found me and gave me this thank you card, and she's like, hey, thank you so much for the Jazz tickets. It was actually the first time, I'm going to change the names. This is the first time Dylan was able to eat an all week. So he had heart and brain surgery like a week before, and hadn't eaten all week till he went to the Jazz game. So she's like, the first time he's eaten in a week, and he was, I think, 6. 5 or 6, and she's like, he was the most vocal I've ever seen him, just yelling defense, but he couldn't really say the words, so he was just like defense, like just as a little kid, just yelling it out. And then she said, and it helped bring up Sarah's mood during the holidays because she was in foster care and it was really hard for her. And she was like, it was great for her to see how what she said was how the other side lives life. Like she thought she would never see this side of life again, being all you can eat food, being
It's
really
good
close
food.
to the
I've
core.
been to the Toyota Club.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah, and I started to get to know the family a little bit more, and this couple had 8 foster kids, and they usually take the kids that no one wants, like the kid that has to have brain surgery and heart surgery. She's like, no, we'll take them. And so they had 8 foster kids, and she only had 2 at the Ronald McDonald House while her husband were taking care of the rest. But I had no idea, this amazing experience was going to happen with, tickets that my buddy gave me. But that was so impactful because I'm like, what she said was like why we do it. It's like, these kids don't experience like life like a lot of other kids, but she got to taste it. She got to experience it. And I was just like, oh my gosh. So now it's just that in the first year, that really just kept me going and continues to keep me going because that event, I just like, oh my gosh, just because I was doing the charity, I was in that point in my life that I was able to do that for that family. And then that's just one example of tons of other families that were able to help. And I was just like, oh man, if I didn't even go with my heart and start this, that I would not have experienced that. And I tell people, like, you can give me all the money in the world and I would not trade it for that experience. Just that one, let alone, we have hundreds of those types of stuff. I couldn't give it up. Yeah, I couldn't.
I want to do a shout out to our, we've got some really terrific listeners, like some amazing listeners. And there's a lot of organizations that you can support out there, but I wanted to do a shout out. If you have a chance to support Ivan and what he's accomplishing, like this kid, this family will remember this event forever. Mm-hmm. Then the second thing I wanted to say is how lucky are we to stand on the tracks of miracles. And I say that because that train's rolling. It's coming. We don't know where. We don't know when. We might not see what, but that was a miracle. What you did was a miracle in their life. And one of the things I was raised to believe is to be the miracle. Like, look for the opportunity to be the miracle. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're not involved in an organization, you should be, because you're not on the tracks. You're not, if you are in survival mode and you're paying the bills and then you're going to work and then you're Christmas and then paying the bills and going to work and Christmas, you're missing out on a huge opportunity for you to enrich your life and create fulfillment. Mm-hmm. One of the things I admire about my friend Ivan is he has a tremendous amount of fulfillment in his life for a young man, because he has gone on the tracks and he's in the way of miracles hitting all the time. We have another friend of ours, Katie, who is on the tracks, and she's like, she'll talk about it in great detail, like these, like, and then this happened, and I wasn't expecting it, and then it happened. And I just feel like people who aren't involved in an organization, even outside your church, I want to say get outside the church. But even if that's where you're doing it, that's fine. But get in the place where you're doing some service, because if you're not, your life is not as good as it could be. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Powerful.
Yeah.
And I feel like in my organization, and I hate to bring it back around, but in my organization, I always say that the person that's the most blessed is Rob. Yeah. Because of all the stuff that I'm doing and all the hard work that I'm doing, at the end of the day, like, man, it blesses my life endlessly. We talked about refining the Ivan, the rough, the tool that was there 6 years ago, this young man that had a great idea. 6 years later, you've learned communication skills, you've learned management skills, but you've been humbled and refined in ways that you can't describe to other people. If you could give someone advice looking back and say, hey, I'm thinking about starting a nonprofit, what would you tell them? I'm excited to hear the answer to this.
Yeah,
actually.
it's funny. I just have a lot of friends, so I get asked quite a bit that same question, and or maybe not that question, but it's like I'm starting one.
Yeah.
Where do I start, and certain things like that. And what I kind of joke, it's kind of a joke, but it's not a joke. It's like, are you sure? Like, because part of me is like, are you like, do you know what you're getting yourself into? And I'm sure you would ditto what I'm about to say. Is like, if I knew what it took, I probably wouldn't have started it.
Yeah.
Like now that 6 years in, I'm like, oh my gosh. But I started because I loved it and I wanted to do it. And again, I'm not trying to discourage people from starting a charity and nonprofit and stuff. So it's kind of a joke, but also like, are you sure? Like it's commitment that I've never seen, never had to do before, even with work.
Yeah.
It's, at least at work you get paid, you get a paycheck. So that's kind of where I start with people. And then I ask them, why? Like,
Why would you do that?
why would you? What's the
Compelling.
the fire in
Yeah.
you? There's a mission, but like, why do you do that? Why? A lot of times it's back to our history, or like something happened when we were kids, or in our lives, whatever it is that pushes us to do stuff, and or they sadly go through a horrific thing that they have to deal with, like our friend Katie. She lost her husband and just had a baby, so
Single mom. We'll have her on. She's got an amazing story.
So I kind of talk about that, and then I also say, is there anyone in that field? Is there anyone kind of doing the similar things? And I say that because in my research and stuff like that, no one's really doing what I'm doing, but sometimes I'm like, well, maybe you can just help them build a program of what you want to do.
And go do what you're good at.
And do what you're good at.
Yeah.
Or, talk to them to see what is needed. So, like you have some validation of what you want to do. Like you're like, hey, I want to, help single moms and stuff. And 2-3 years into doing my charity, I started noticing, I'm like, wait, like half our families are single moms. I don't say that in my mission that we help single moms, but I'm like, it's just
how it is
that, these underserved, disadvantaged kids, more than half of them are single parent and mostly single moms. And I'm like, oh, let me talk. And that's how I found our friend Katie and started working with her. So like, find organizations that are serving the people that you want to serve, and see if your idea is actually going to work or is needed. Because early on when I started my charity, like, I got this big donation of blankets, we're giving this out to refugees. And I quickly learned, like, they're like, oh, is there, because we'll have a lot of different stuff at our events. And I noticed some moms are like, do you have diapers? And then I started talking to our partners, and food stamps does not cover diapers. I didn't know that. So one of the biggest needs for families in poverty is diapers. So we started
well-to-do families.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm like, why are we giving blankets out? We need to give out diapers, So that event we've started to, that has a lot of refugees, and we started having diapers and not blankets at the events. And then, so, talking to people, helping, because, a lot of nonprofits, we will take your help if you want to really want to get involved in stuff. So that's kind of different steps I take with people now. And I'm not, I don't want to say surprised. I'm humbled. I love that people send their friends to me to give them advice of starting a nonprofit.
Yeah.
Sounds to me kind of like, and I've heard stories from different people, but starting a nonprofit is kind of like having a kid. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. Everything is going to be great out of it. It's way more work. It's going to be way more expensive than you thought it would. And if you actually knew what you were getting into, you probably wouldn't have done it in the first place.
And we call it our baby.
Yeah.
We call it our baby.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot to that, and I also, it is like in having a baby, you wouldn't send that baby back.
Oh, absolutely not.
Super grateful for this little best worst idea I've ever had in my life. I give similar advice, Ivan. I always say, if you're going to start a nonprofit, go join one and learn about what that means, because it's not it's not what you it's just not what you imagine. These people have like these imaginations, like, I'm gonna do this, and it's kind of a rude awakening when you realize that there's overhead and there's there's
The business
there's
side
the
of it.
business. Yeah, there's politics involved,
Yeah.
and you have to work your way around that. And you're not going to talk to, a lot of people will discount what you're doing for the first 5 or 6 years until they realize that you're legitimately out to do your mission. And it's a lot. It's an amazing event. And I think a lot of people do that I've talked to, they've done a nonprofit or they want to do a nonprofit because of significance, because they think that they'll look good.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, perhaps the very worst reason in the world to do it, because number one, it's not sustainable. Nobody cares. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how good you think it's going to make you look. Nobody's looking. No one's looking. Nobody cares. They're all living their own lives. And so significance disappears. And when that burns off, then what's left? It's that why that you talked about. And if that why is not compelling, it will not last. And so that's what I think happens to these 10,000 charities is a lot of people have great ideas and maybe even really genuinely honest, good expectations. And then they get into it and they realize, oh man, this is hard. And there's a lot of competition.
Well, and how much of it too is that they don't have the information. From everybody that we've talked to that has a nonprofit, finding how do you set up the 503c, how do you do all of this stuff?
Yeah.
And finding the information is really hard, and I would imagine there's a big washout on that as well.
Yeah, another thing I bring up to people that I asked too that was crushing to me, and I actually did this to a lady last week, and she was crushed, but I was like, I gotta tell her. There's kind of 4 sources of funding for nonprofits. You got federal government, corporations, and then individuals, but then foundations. So foundations are, a lot of times our families or corporations start it, but these wealthy families put all this money into a foundation and the purpose of the foundation is to give money to nonprofits. So I didn't know this till I started. They're a big part of funding, individuals and foundations probably, and then corporate, and then federal is probably the different tiers. But foundations, they won't even look at you or accept an application within the first 3 years. Like after 3 years, then they'll look, and I'm just like, what? Like, how are we gonna survive? Because corporations take a while because you got to get to know the people. Individuals, like Rob said, can't give as much. So like foundation's a big part because they're like, they legally have to give their money away to nonprofits. And so that was crushing for me because I'm like, I can't even and it's hard to write grants, but I'm like, I can't even look at them or try and talk to them till year 3 because they won't even. And I found out because most nonprofits don't last 2 years.
It's their way of vetting.
Yeah.
The other thing too is to get a foundation to give you a donation is not easy. Like there is a high barrier of entry to get into them. And then once you're in, it's a little bit easier, but then there's another skill set that you have to learn about maintaining that relationship. How can I take this foundation just gave me $10,000. How can I take that $10,000 and show them their value? What's their ROI on their $10,000? It's not just as easy as taking the money and putting it to the cause. That's the easiest part of it. Spending the money, nobody has a problem spending the money.
Yeah.
But getting the money in a way that is long-term and meaningful, because what happens is these corporations will come in and best seat in the house will be their sweetheart for a couple of years. And then it's time for them to change because it's part of their model. And so you lose like doTERRA, doTERRA, who was your biggest supporter. And now what do you do? And so running a nonprofit is almost like I'm about to lose my sweetheart. She's about to leave me because you never know if they're going to show up this year or not because of the change in funding, change in their mission. It happens all the time. And so you're constantly hunting.
Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How much of it is that you have to provide the experience to the people that are donating as well?
It's a big deal. It's something you're very good at. Something that I actually envy Ivan, and he does. He'll send them. Talk about that.
Yeah.
Like, what do you send to your people to let them know what's happening?
Yeah, and again, this comes back to talking to other nonprofits and again people's ideas and thoughts and stuff. And one kind of going back to not many places let you volunteer as a family, let kids volunteer. That's a big thing for us because I'm like, if you bring your kids with us, the kids will get hooked. You will get hooked, and I'm like, you see the vision and stuff like that. So that's one thing that we got done. I'm like, we can have people literally on the floor, with the kids right there, helping, seeing our cause in action right there. And then videos, as the world is now, videos, pictures and stuff like that helps. But then, trying to create this relationship with these people, these foundations, these companies, I started sending out personalized thank you cards from families and stuff like that, and keeping them engaged that way. And I'm always trying to find ways that it's not me saying thank you.
Yeah.
Like there's others, there's visuals, there's just all these other things, because starting a nonprofit, I didn't plan to be the face of the charity, but I am. People know me and see me, and but there's one thing for me to say it, but because I'm running, I'm the founder, but it's something to see the family say it. Like at our fundraiser, we'll have a family talk about it, we'll have partners talk about it. So it's not just me, but others are helping validate what we're doing.
That's brilliant. That's like marketing to if you put the business hat on to it, right? You have to keep the donors engaged just as much as the people you're trying to do. The thank you notes back, if you could get them to, like, the families or people that you're helping to write the thank you notes back and giving those to the donors, that's a brilliant idea. Because they're the people that are giving you money, they're looking for the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
They want the validation and the feel good that they've done something. That's high marks. Well done.
Yeah.
Smart.
And I don't blame them.
No, that's why they do it.
You want to, and especially these foundations, think of it as a business, and like they're investing in us. They're investing in a cause. They need to see that ROI. They want to see, and I get it. Like you have millions of dollars and you want to do good, and you send it out. You want to be like, are we doing good? Is there something actually coming back that we're like, yeah, no, you're doing good, and you're doing a great service to the community.
One of the largest objection handlers that I come across with my organization is building that that value and building that rapport. And I think that what you're doing by engaging your families to be the voice rather than me be the voice, they're the voice. I think that is powerful. I've worked hard on how I could do that and have that delivered, because without those raving fans in the donor box, you got nothing. You really have nothing. It doesn't matter what your intentions are. So I really admire that about you. Now, as we're kind of wrapping up, Thanksgiving, excuse me.
It's just a habit. It's just
a
a
habit.
knee-jerk
It rolls off my
tongue.
tongue.
He just doesn't even stop.
Let's talk about the gala that's happening on March 12th. Let's talk about that's happening at Hell Theater. I mean, that's a great location.
We've so our first couple years we couldn't afford a fancy gala, dinner and stuff. And my former board president, very good friend of mine, he we used to hang out a lot before he got married, and so we would go to dinner a lot. And his dad taught him, and I'm sure maybe his grandpa, but they love sweets, they love desserts. So it wouldn't be out of the norm that he orders his dessert before the dinner came. Like, half the time we went out, it was like that. And we're like, he's like, the dessert's the best part,
Yeah.
So when
and you take us home and warm it up later.
Yeah. And so, when we were trying to come up with a fundraiser, and we're like, oh man, I want to do a dinner or gala, but I'm like, we don't have the money and stuff. He's like, well, let's just do a dessert night. So we got lucky that we had some connections, and some local bakeries donated all these desserts, but it was a little different because it was like, instead of a dinner buffet, it was a dessert buffet. So you had like all kinds of choices. So when we got some more funding and we could do a gala, I'm like, we're keeping this. So that's kind of our twist in the gala is like, we say, oh, come to the sweetest event in town, because we start with a dessert buffet and tons of dessert. You get to choose. That's the hors d'oeuvres. It's dessert. So you come, get some desserts. We'll have a dinner after that and program. And
the thing I like about this, like the logic, the business side again, is like you've just destroyed their appetite.
And here's a little bit.
Here's a little slice of something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll have a program and auction. And this year we're gonna have a live auction
Wow.
as well.
Who's your auctioneer?
My buddy. Are you an auctioneer? I didn't know that.
No,
Oh.
I'm actually terrible at
Oh,
it.
okay.
I
I feel like you
that was
could.
an
I
inside joke.
feel like you could have been.
I bet I could do it for somebody else. I
Yeah.
can't do it for my
No.
because I get too emotional about it. But
You guys get distracted.
No, actually, my buddy who was helped me before the charity started that year that I was doing it myself, he helped a lot. His name is John Watkins. He's the lead DJ for Mix 105.
what? Cool.
Yeah, we've been 6-7 years now. He's helped, with concert tickets and meet and greets. He loves the charity, and he's probably a dozen other charity events and stuff. So, and what's cool is he's been to our events, so it's like
He gets it.
he gets it, and we talked maybe 20 minutes right before because he knows everything about the charity. I don't have to hey, this is what we do.
Yeah.
Blah blah blah. He's
It's
like,
who
"Nope."
we are. He's got it.
He's literally has his own events that he can talk about that he's helped with.
Wow. That's amazing stuff. So that's coming up on March 12th. If I wanted more information about that gala and I wanted to get involved, where could I find that?
Yeah, so you can go to our website www.bestseatslc.org, and you can find info on us, on the event. You can buy your tickets there, or you can follow us on Facebook or Instagram, and our handle is at bestseatslc for both. So you can find info all over those three.
So if you're listening to this, look on the links. We're gonna have those links in the comments. As we call it the bio. What do you call that?
It's the comments, the bio, the description.
Description.
Depends on what platform you're looking at.
We'll have that information for you readily available so you can get involved. And I'm going to tell you again, as I said before, if you're not involved in something, this is a great one to be involved in.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of organizations out there where you wonder where the money goes. Well, you actually have an opportunity to see it and be a part of it. Not just that money was sent to that place and it helped those people. We hope. This is where the money went, and this is what it did, and I got to see it in action. So I love that about your organization, Ivan. Where do you see Best Seat going? Like we've built a new foundation here for 2024, and we're stepping into this larger audience of donors and recipients and the whole thing. Like you're growing. Where do you see yourself traveling? And let's say the next 6 years. We're 6 years away now.
Well, obviously we want to grow. We want to go to more parts of Utah. So actually, just again, as I was working with our grant consultant, getting numbers and stuff, and I'm like, I don't even know how many kids we can reach in Salt Lake, just in Salt Lake, and then let alone Utah County and Utah in general. So she got some statistics, and she brought back the 2020 census had 92,000. Was it 90 or 92,000 kids in poverty in Utah?
Holy cow!
So I'm like, okay, there's
3 million of us,
there's-
by the way.
yeah. So I'm like, we're helping thousands of kids, and then there's 90,000 kids that we can't help. So I'm like, that's my next goal. That's like trying to
See the big picture.
See the big picture. So kind of, because part of me is like, I know there's a lot of kids that we can help, and we're just kind of in a small area in Salt Lake, but I'm like, what is, further out? And I'm like, okay, 90,000 is the next number and hopefully in 6 years we can reach there. And but yeah, so that's
Huge.
Yeah,
That is huge.
yeah. But I say that, and I'm like, there's gonna be a lot more work, a lot more money to get there. But now I'm like, okay, there's something to actually have something that we can look forward to try and achieve better than the unknown.
Yeah,
like, oh, there's more kids we can help.
We want to help more.
Yeah, we want to help more. I'm like, well, that's the next one, and then
What does more look like now? Now you have a more. Oh man,
That's a massive more.
Ivan.
Yeah.
Like gives me goosebumps thinking about the impact that your organization is going to leave in the world. It's amazing. Now, one of the things I want to talk about, and you stand on the doorstep of an interesting world. You're kind of like, that I can see into these Title I schools. I'm seeing these families come, these people that have just come to the United States or like extreme poverty, and then you live in Sandy, which is not a bad place to live. I would imagine. You can see both sides of the world. Do you ever feel a little overwhelmed, like you you're not doing enough?
Oh, I don't want to say daily, but yeah, pretty much like, especially the past couple years, and I'm sure you can relate. Just the more I'm hearing, because more people know about us, which is great on like donors and supporters and volunteer side, but then also the
Schools
kids,
and
the
the
kids and the
teachers.
schools and the teachers that want our help.
Mm.
And I'm like, it sucks, but the last couple of years, it's like, I got to say no to, we're not ready. But now I'm hearing that more requests. Again, that 90,000 number, that 90,000 more are starting to want us and be a part of us. And so yeah, almost daily, I'm just like, oh man, I'm just, there's so much more that want our help. And I just can't.
That's the hardest no to say. It's easy to say no to a volunteer who perhaps doesn't fit, or a lot of these different opportunities that come their way. But saying no to those little eyeballs that are looking at you, that's the hardest no, in my opinion. And it happens every year. You have to get to that maximum level. How do you manage this? How do you manage the no's and stay in the I've read a book called The Gap and the Gain, and you could really fall into the gap. There's 90,000 kids that need Ivan's attention. How do you stay in the gain of like, but these kids we've helped? How do you do that?
I guess for me, and I'm thankful and blessed is that we always have stuff going on, every month. So that like, if I'm getting low, those events bring me back up. They're like, oh, gets me the fire, keeps me going. So it helps me, but a lot of friends have, especially the past 6 months, have been pretty low because they're like, we serve like my friend Ted, he runs a little Lambs Foundation up in Logan.
Good guy.
Awesome guy.
Yeah.
Mostly diapers, other stuff too. But I was just talking to him and his
formula,
wife.
like it's the basics.
Yeah. He's just like, we've never seen the need till this year.
Yeah.
Like in other organizations, I'm just like, and me too. I'm just like, I'm hearing it too. And so I quickly point to them. I'm like, but look, you gave 50,000 diapers last week or 2 weeks ago. I remember where it was. They're like, oh yeah. So it's trying to remember what we are doing. It is great. It's, and trying to focus on that. But it's a lot easier again for me because I'm like, I'm like getting that validation of like that. Yes. I'm like, yep, I'm helping him. I'm helping her. I'm helping these kids, yes, I'm saying no to all this. So I have that luckily, compared to like you where it's only a few times a year that you're like, oh, trying to
light that fire
where I'm like, I can light it all the time. But trying to focus again, what we are doing, and then it's good. It's better than good enough. It's like, if we weren't there, then there'd be nothing.
Yeah.
So that is how I do it. And I've been telling that to quite a few friends lately. That like, yeah, I know there's more to need, but you're doing great. Look what you did last week or last month. And it's like, oh yeah, you're right. And just I guess it's that validation of support from our family, our friends, and
tribe.
The tribe, because we're all doing stuff and we're all like, okay, back and forth. I need help. Now you need help. And again, all that pep talk.
It's good stuff. Ivan and I have created what's called the Founders Club, and we've had people come and go. And the thing that I love about the Founders Club is there's a core group of us that we get together and we talk about that gap that he talked about, where like there's a lot of information on how to start. There's a lot of information like to be big, but there's this gap of like 10 years where you're like on your own and no one's doing it. And I have problems that perhaps you don't have because how do I come up with hundreds of thousands of dollars to reach this goal outside of just my income? I can only donate as much as I can. Or what's the technology used that was the best technology for that live auction? Or what was the best technology used as a CRM to keep your individual donors engaged? What are these things? And we have these conversations, and I want to put it out there that we're always looking for good charities to join us. The key for me in this Founders Club is that you have to be a charity that's already organized. It can't be a dream. It has to be something where you're already pulling the levers and pushing the buttons, and you're running up against the problems. A couple of the things that we've done as we sit across the table from one another is we've created this almost, it's a mastermind, a support group. Sometimes we're crying the blues and sometimes we're singing praises, and it's been tremendously helpful. Ivan has talked a lot about technology and systems that I'm not strong in. And I've talked about other things, hopefully, that have blessed your life as well. But Katie brings a tremendous amount of value, and we've had these different charities. We've actually had a few of them on the show that are doing amazing things. And the thing that's interesting is that Ivan is a genius in his genius. You know what I mean? Like, there's no one more perfect than Ivan is at this one part of his charity. The thing that he said that's amazing is that I'm looking for people to help me and to step out of the way. And you're really good at that. I'm just coming to the point where I'm like giving away more and more to the right people. And so the Founders Club has been hugely influential in my life. And we have a meeting coming up here in a week or two that I'm really looking forward to. And we just sit down to have lunch, and sometimes it's just to support one another. That's it. Mostly that's what it is.
Mostly, yeah. For me, it's support and getting different ideas, bouncing off each other and stuff. And again, like I've mentioned and he mentioned, that gap of like, what to do. Like you're 10 years in, Katie's 11 years in, just having the different types, like, and perspectives and stuff. And I guess going back to someone who's trying to start a nonprofit, and I also say, like, what's your strengths? Like, lean on your strengths, lean on your support group, because they'll be the ones that start it off. They'll be your first donors. It's your family, your friends and stuff. So don't think you got to go do a gala, maybe a golf tournament's better for you, or
a car show,
whatever
you're into,
whatever it is, it's already easy that you already have this tribe, this culture, this friends. If you love cars, you have a motorcycle and you're in a motorcycle gang, so you did a motorcycle rally. I'm like, it's kind of just lean on that, and then you can build off of that.
Yeah. Powerful stuff. So one of the last questions I always like to ask our guests, and I'm going to ask you, is now looking backwards, we're looking back down the hall of time, and there's that young kid at Ronald McDonald's house. What advice would you give him?
Honestly, I don't think I would give him any advice.
What do you mean?
I loved everything, the bad, the good, and I needed to know what I didn't know. I needed to learn. So honestly, I would just say, hey, go for it. Just do it. Because again, I need that pain. I need that struggle. I mean, obviously the ups are great. The joy is awesome. The happy parts and stuff. But, again, if I had to do it all over again, I would do it the same way, because I needed all that trouble, those potholes, those down moments to refine me. So honestly, I would just like, go for it, man. Because again, I didn't know what I did.
Yeah.
And probably wouldn't have done it if I knew everything. So,
well, if I could go back and talk to young Ivan, here's what I would tell him. Can I tell you?
Yeah.
I would say, trust yourself. Trust yourself. Like, trust it, because you had a great idea, and here we are on the doorstep of unprecedented times for your organization. Honestly, I'm sure that you used to pray for opportunities to talk to the people that you're talking to today. And you just needed to trust yourself, because there's a lot of times where you're like, what am I doing? What have I gotten myself into? And so that's the advice I'd give young Ivan.
Yeah.
And so if I could throw that out there to any young entrepreneurs, is trust yourself. And if you're going to do it 100% for the right reason. And if you can do that, then miracles will hit you in the face regardless of your best efforts. I always joke that Thanksgiving Heroes is still here regardless of my best efforts. Like, I should have ruined this years ago. Have you heard me say that?
Oh yeah.
Many times. I should have ruined this years ago because of myself. In spite of myself, in spite of all of my strengths and weaknesses, that it's still here is a testament to the greatness of what you're doing. It's not about Ivan anymore. Yeah. You're in fact maybe one of the least parts of the organization. I know you're the face, and without it still wouldn't be, but you are surrounded by some giants. Yeah. And isn't that amazing? Yeah. It's an amazing thing. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you've enjoyed the message that Ivan's had to share with us tonight. Do you have anything else you'd like to add, Toph?
No, Ivan, Great story. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, I would like to encourage you again. This is the call to action: is to get off your butt and to get involved. See what Ivan's about. See what it's like to see these families, look them in the eye, and make a difference in their life. And then in so doing, you're going to go home and realize my life is really very good.
Yeah.
And that is the secret of Best Seat in the House. Is it really does. It's a reflection on how good our lives are and how blessed we are. Take advantage of that. It doesn't matter if you have nothing or have a lot. Show up and contribute, because everybody's needed to make a difference in the world. And Ivan's looking for good people to show up and to participate and be a part of the organization. Is that true?
Yeah.
So click on the link, get involved, go to the gala, tell everybody about it. Go to Facebook, all of the different social medias out there, and help share the message, because that is really the power that we each have. If you can share the message just to your social media, there might be the one person that's the miracle that Ivan needs to meet this year.
Yep.
And so thank you very much for being a part of our evening tonight. And if you've liked what you've heard, please subscribe, share this podcast, leave comments, and let us know what we can do to improve or what you enjoyed about it. So grateful for you to be a part of the American Masterminds. Have a great night.
Thank you.